Do celebrities sell their souls? Like, what is your take on that? That's the thing that people talk about all the time. There's songs about it.
Walk the red carpet.
As Ariana Grande has obviously sold hers, or something has happened to that poor girl. What's your take on all that good stuff? They're right across the street.
I have been a really heavy conspiracy theorist for the last 13, 14 years. And before, I really did initially believe in a lot of these like fundamental conspiracy stuff, like that their celebrities are selling their soul. And a lot of that, there is versions of certain things that have come out. Like with the Diddy stuff, there's a lot of stuff in the Diddy things that have aligned with a lot of these regular conspiracies that we've always said were happening. Now, over time though, so like, okay, so when people have like an awakening, they can have awakening from many different avenues. An awakening is like your awareness goes from here to here. And from here to here, you can either have a gentle one or you can have like a very aggressive one where your mind gets bent too far. And then you have like an ungrounded reality that you're in. Humanity is going through that right now.
100%.
So like people like us went through a long time ago and had enough time to integrate because the world was still learning and we still had to go into regular life and act like normal people, even though we're like, reptilians are feeding on us right now. Do you know that? And like, so, but right now that's happening to the collective. This like awareness is coming from here to here. Things like Epstein and all of this stuff are pulling that to the surface. And so there is a thing with conspiracies that is very similar to drugs, that is very similar to psychedelics, and it gives you a very similar feeling in your body. It's an adrenaline rush, it's a mind fuck, it's a brain bender, it's all of these things. So it can become an addiction. And like say when the Diddy stuff first started coming out, people are like, this is a distraction. I'm like, no, man, you're just looking for another hit to get high. This is really shit going down. You're looking for your next hit. And just because I was so bad into that, I was in like conspiracy psychosis like over a decade ago. Like I literally could not go anywhere without being like, the Illuminati symbolism. Do you see it? The Freemasons are everywhere.
I mean, they are everywhere though, Jen.
And I was very convinced that what I had discovered was 100% the truth and 100% what was going on. Over time, as I've learned more, healed more, my perspective has changed, my filter has changed. I've learned more about everything. And then, there's kind of these hermetic principles where every truth is a half truth. And if you believe that you know the full truth of something, it means that you only have half the information. And then under the ayahuasca, I got a similar message. I saw all of these like, all these like symbols, the satanic sigil and all-seeing eye and like all of these like symbolism of conspiracy stuff. And the ayahuasca was telling me like, these are not proof of evil. These are reminders of your own light. These things are in your reality to remind you of your light, not to prove that there's evil. And then it was saying that be mindful when you're a truth seeker because it's very easy to become a knower. And once you become a knower, you stop seeking and you stay in a half-truth. And so I used to believe that celebrities were selling their soul. Now I have one belief that it's like, you can't sell your soul. There's nothing to buy the soul. There's nothing to get. You can't do that. Like it is all one and the entire universe is only God. Even if people do believe in the devil is a reflection of something in our inner state, which is also a part of God and is also serving God. There is only one thing that exists and nothing equals the one. We're all fractals of the one. So
what do you make of celebrities that claim that like, they have to sort of sacrifice a family member? There's so many instances of that happening. Is that something do you think coincidence or is there something to that?
So I do think that there is a rite of passage that is happening. So I do believe, but I think, okay, so what people believe to be demons, now I have a more expanded perspective of. I used to believe in demons in this, like they're entities or something that are around, that are feeding or whatever. Now I realize that like when we're born, we're a 360 soul. When a baby comes here, it's pure. And then over time, it's like, don't say that, don't do that, this. Then we have people who have even more extreme trauma. And what happens is like that 360 becomes eventually a narrow path of our personality of who we believe ourselves to be, and we shut down all these other parts of ourselves. However, those other parts of the 360 soul can actually become fractalized and stuck in time. So if somebody has an extreme traumatic event, they're molested by a family member, let's say, a part of that soul gets stuck in time and replays in that loop and then gets exiled from the self. And then, but it still exists within you.
Right.
So what happens is that part of the self becomes the shadow. And then that shadow could either be quarantined, depending on the person's mind, or maybe that person gets blackout drunk and it takes the front seat. Or maybe, you know, it gets fed almost like junk food. So we have like, say, for example, I think Diddy is probably a great example. I think Diddy most likely was horribly abused as a child. Like he has all the markers of someone who was abused, but then instead of like kind of being weak and meek about it, is like, no, I'm gonna still be a badass, and he's a Scorpio and is still gonna be super conniving and like,
Hey now.
so the soul gets like fractalized in this way. And then what happens when this part of yourself who is unworthy, unloved, abused, treated horribly is like, here's all the money, here's all the fame, here's all the attention, here's all the women, here's all the men, here's all the drugs. And it becomes so powerful that this wounded part can take over the person. So when this like selling a soul thing, it's really just selling out your dignity. But then allowing this part of yourself that is wounded, instead of nourishing it with like love, inner child work, it's nourished with poison, greed, money, and that takes the front seat. And then that becomes almost like another entity that controls the person. But this is living inside all of us, the shadow. And it just depends how severely wounded and then how much poison it's been fed. But there is a chain that is happening. So let's say someone like a Clive Davis, who is like the worst of the worst, right? Like he's probably done this to every single person of every single song we've ever heard on the radio since our parents were children. And like, so when that side of themselves that is so wounded and demented actually takes the front seat, now it needs to be fed in other ways because those like pleasure zones and everything are completely blown out. And okay, so then these people, these gatekeepers that are not talented, they're not, you know, like we have like our people, like our true God-given talents, you know, whether you like them or not. You know, I'm not a fan of like pop music in that way, but like you can't deny that someone like a Lady Gaga, a Beyonce, Justin Bieber, like that these people are truly God-given talent. And this is their destiny. Their destiny is to have this voice. It comes directly from God. They're born with this. They have in their mind that this is their God-given path. It is their birthright to share this gift with the world. When you have these untalented middlemen, the producers, the agents, the managers, all the people who don't have that within themselves, but they love all the materials. They love the most expensive jewels, the best food, the most expensive wine, the best houses, the best cars, the best women. There is nothing more valuable than that God-given talent and destiny that those people are born with. And that is the ultimate value of anything. And these people, that demon in them, which is that wounded part of themselves, it has consumed everything and it still doesn't feel good. So now it needs to consume something of the highest value, which is like, say, a 16-year-old Rihanna, who is this God-given talent, who this is her path, this is her destiny. And then what they do is they interject themselves into this God-given destiny so that they can feed and harvest and hook into this person. And then there is also these rites of passage. So they break that person, fractalize their soul in the same way through trauma, through the abuse, through all of the things that they force them to do. And they dangle it like, unless you do this, you'll never get to live your birthright that God gave you, and your gift will go to waste. So it becomes this like almost like a pyramid scheme, an MLM of abuse that continues on. And I think more so than it being selling your soul to some deity, it is this disease in the human condition that is such an empty, insatiable void that is looking for the highest value of something to feel a spark of anything. Imagine how great it must feel to someone who is a bottomless pit of wounds to be like, wow, Beyonce, that's a star. We all know when somebody's a star from when they're a kid.
Right.
You know, everybody in their life can see it. It's a glow, a light about them. And they want a taste of it so bad because they can't feel anything because they've been so damaged. So like Clive Davis did it to Diddy. Diddy did it to Justin Bieber and Usher. And it's like this until somebody breaks the cycle, it continues to just work through the human condition and probably goes back. You know, we know that this goes back into ancient times because of all these weird stories about like the kings and queens doing all this creepy weird stuff and sacrificing virgins. And that's the other thing too, is this obsession with virginity as well, because they love to get these people when they're like so pure, still 14 years old, still fresh. It's like all of these like celebrities, we see how young they started because it's not only the light of their gift, the light of their pureness that these people want to consume and still feel nothing.
Yeah. It kind of sounds like the way you're putting it with that like fractalized part of everyone's personality, you know, almost like getting fame, like mega fame is a trauma in itself. Because there's that theory out there people talk about like, why does that person act like that? Like Michael Jackson or something. And like, well, they were probably just destroyed as a child and they're stuck in that age, right? So like they're forever just there. All those other parts of them are in there, but there's something super wrong to some of these people. Obviously, we've seen like a lot of these mega celebrity child stars grow up to have lots of issues, you know, and these people, the way you're putting it, it's not that they're selling their souls to a deity or something. It's that they're basically selling themselves to materialism. And so it's like this wheel of, you know, I need this, I need that, and then these other people swoop in and take advantage of it. And
and it's a bottomless pit. And it's like these, I think a lot of times too, those early ages of those mega celebrities, I don't even think they're selling themselves to materialism yet, because what they're doing is like, they have dreamed this their whole life. Since they were a kid, they knew that they were going to be something and someone. And they're not even selling their soul to the materialism yet. It's literally they're trying to walk their God-given path. And these wounded monsters are coming in and feeding on them. And it's this cycle that is happening, you know? So it's like, like part of me is totally like, fuck yeah, take Diddy down. I hope he's detoxing hard in prison. But then the other part of me is like, you know, damn, like actually, like, what about like, because I do believe in soul contracts, and I do believe that we're all one, and I believe that everybody has a role in this grand game of life. And like part of me is like, take him down as bad as you can. And then the other side of me is like, damn, this soul really signed up to teach humanity and to pull the veil off of this most horrible thing that has been happening for thousands of years on this planet. Right. And then it makes me also feel compassion that I'm like, this person was a child once. And that's another thing that comes back to the ayahuasca. So I asked the ayahuasca because it was telling me that there's no such thing as evil. And I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about Bill Gates? What about reptilians? And I'm like, what do you mean there's no such thing as evil? And it said, because everything is one and everything is God, that basically there's only two reasons for evil to happen. One is that everyone and everything in existence is a child of God. Every single person was once a child. Everyone is a child of God. Everybody is a part of God. Those people become so wounded that they get lost and forget that. And that wound is causing them to seek in all of these other ways to try to feel that feeling again. And then the other side is then there's other parts of consciousness, like say reptilians, or, you know, if people do believe in the devil or things like that, then those things are actually high aspects of the game that are willing to sacrifice their own soul's ascension for everybody to be able to see their own light and to learn the lesson. Because every story needs a bad guy, you know?
My issue would be when these people like hurt innocent people, right? Like the harming the children. It's like, I can see the idea of this revelation that we need, right? And how, you know, that's a good thing that we've now discovered, that there's these horrible things happening, but it's just a wasteland of innocent people that have been destroyed. I'm like, that's hard for me to wrap around. But like, I read the Bible a lot, and there's things that God does to people that in my mind, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. He had all those people stoned to death for stealing something, a whole family, right? I'm like, I just don't understand. So I understand I'm just a little human, and I don't understand all these things. But when it comes to evil, I'm like, man, the ones that go after innocence, like whatever Diddy was doing, and maybe we could segue into Epstein stuff. Like that to me is verifiable evil, where it's like they literally harmed innocent children.
Right.
I'm like, and I don't believe in capital punishment. I don't want the state to have the ability to kill people, right? I just want them outside of society forever.
Right. And, not to say that there's not evil actions. There's no big bad. There's no force that is equal to God. And by God, my perception, I'm more of like on the pantheistic perception of God, which is God is everything. Versus like God is an entity or a deity or something like that. I believe that God is everything, and every single person, everything in everything, and that we're all tiny little specks of that having an experience. But I think that it goes the same way, whether you see it more as a father or you see it more as the fabric of everything. But I think that, when I say that there's no evil, I don't mean that people aren't doing evil acts.
Okay.
I mean that they also there's this book. It's a children's book. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun. And I think it's like the most like beautiful, simplistic way of like describing why bad things happen. And it's basically this little soul. He's like, oh my God, I know who I am. So he goes to God and he's like, I'm the light. And God's like, you are the light. And then he's like, okay, well, I know I'm the light, but I want to experience that I'm the light. And they're like, oh, okay, well, then I know what you can do, like kind of like live and incarnate. And then he's like, but what part of the light do you want to experience? And it's like, oh, I want to experience the part of light that is forgiveness. And then he's like, wait, but I have nothing to forgive. And he's like, another soul comes forward and is like, I could give you something to forgive, but I would have to make myself so dense and so far from who I truly am, and to dim my own light so much to give you something to forgive so that you can experience what you are. And then it said, like, when I go down there, we both go down to earth and we do this, don't forget who I am. Don't forget that I'm also light, that I'm also a part of God. Because if you forget who I am, I'm going to forget who I am, and then we'll both be lost. And then, so I feel like that's also what's happening with this thing of like, people are just wounded. So they've been disconnected from God, from their own light. And then that's a void. It's this bottomless pit that is like filled sometimes with the most disgusting, vile things that you could ever think of. And, so, and I really think too, like, in the spiritual world, they kind of call them light workers. In the Christian world, it would be like more of like being a good Christian. And one of the things that I feel like is really lost in all of this stuff, in this like battle versus good and evil, is like, it's not going to change by meeting it with more anger, more hatred. And it's like, are people going to really be able to be of the light when it's easy to feel compassionate for the victim? It's easy to feel compassionate for the good guy, for the person who's doing the right thing. Can we actually grow as a species to be able to have compassion for the person doing the wrong thing, for the person who is so wounded that they end up like Diddy and do those things, or the person who's so wounded that they end up like, any of these other names and abusers?
I'm with you to a degree. Like, I think we should practice radical redemption. I believe in people being able to be redeemed. I do have a line when it comes to the people who hurt kids. I'm like, man, I'll leave that to God. I'm not touching that. Like, those people need to be eradicated from society. Put them in a place,
And I go both ways with that too. Like, when I'm in my very like compassionate spiritual side, I'm like, gosh, I have to find it in me to see that they're all part of God. They're all God's children. And if they've lost their way, I can help them find their way by seeing the light in them. And then other times I'm like, there's only one cure and it's a bullet, and I'm like,
I know. So when it comes to the psychosis thing, I love that phrase, conspiracy psychosis. And you mentioned how we're all going through a trauma now. Like, I think the whole world went through a trauma during the lockdowns, right? And like, it was crazy. UFOs spiked, like the sightings of UFOs spiked rather. Now, at the risk of sounding like someone who just wants another hit of the conspiracy juice, Jen, do you think that it was a plan to make us all conspiracy theorists and be like, that's the real thing. Let's just break them all down together. And then we'll just do whatever we're going to do over here.
So, there's this hermetic principle that both sides of everything are true. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what really is like where we have to get to, because I think both sides are true. I think there are people who are operating from whatever. And I mean, a lot of times people think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like, even if there is, which most likely, yeah, of course there is some type of cabal of very 1% people who have for thousands of years a bloodline that has been controlling this planet. That for sure, I believe. And I do believe that they believe in population control. Mm-hmm. And so I do believe that that is one truth.
Yeah.
But then I also believe that the opposite truth is that, like, also, like, those lockdowns, like, forced so many people into their purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many people who were just, like, in NPC mode. And then, like, when the vaccine happened, was like, fuck this. I'm a person.
Yeah, it was amazing.
I'm meant to do something. I'm not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's almost kind of was like a seed has to break in order to grow a tree. Yeah. And it was each person's soul's individual decision of how they wanted to heal it. So part of me gets so riled up and is like, I still can't believe they did that to us. That these like, part of me gets like full of rage. Like, I cannot believe that they freaking did this and got away with it. And then the other part of me is like, but wow, how many of us would still be in a life that we didn't want to be living?
Totally.
If it wasn't for us getting pushed to our limit with the mandates and all of this like nonsense that was so extreme.
Yeah. I think COVID was a blessing, I was in New York. You were in New York, right?
I was in California.
You were in California. Okay. Mm-hmm. You were in California as well, Jen?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were in two of the worst places in the country to be. But yeah, I mean, it was horrible in many ways, but like looking back now, I'm like, personally, it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And the country needed it. And we still had a bumpy road ahead of us. It's not like everything's perfect now, but so many people now see themselves and the system, however you want to put it, in a different light. I'm like, that's a blessing. And we learned so much. Mm-hmm. So then I think we have a little bit of time. I want to get a little bit of Epstein stuff in just to hear your take on it. And like for me, Epstein dying was maybe another time before COVID where we all kind of understood that we're all conspiracy theorists and we could agree on maybe, this or that not happening. What do you make of the files thing happening now? And, our friend Jessica over at House and Habit was there, and it's insane. She's been covering this for a long time. What do you make of that whole, to me, it looked like a PR stunt. I'm not saying that the influencers were involved. I think the White House might have used them to a degree. Yeah. To
I mean, first of all, everything is a PR stunt. Everything is. Yeah. So of course I'm biased because I had two friends that got the documents was, House and Habit, Jessica Reed Krause, and then also Cernovich.
Yeah.
So
two people who've been on this forever.
I was excited. Yeah. I was like, ooh. And I mean, then when I saw like the entire like conservative Twitter glitch out worse than the liberals eating each other alive was the funniest thing. Like, I didn't even ask Jess what was in the binder. I was just texting her like, oh my God, look at everyone losing their shit. This is the funny. I don't even care what's in the files. I can't believe how everyone is acting so jealous.
Yeah.
Like, and I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Obviously there wasn't going to really be much in those files. I mean, now they're online. Everybody like literally like exploded when it was like, 6 hours later or like a day later, they were online. And like, obviously that was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like,
it's all old stuff.
As far as the Epstein stuff though, I personally don't ever think we're going to get the full truth. But then again, who knows, but I don't think we're ever going to get the full truth. I think it's going to be mostly redacted.
Yeah.
I think it's very hypocritical, like a lot of the talk around the Epstein stuff, because it's a lot of red pill people, a lot of people who are like, women should be virgins, women should this, and who wants a 30-year-old woman, ew, washed up old lady. but then want to know about the Epstein files, which are a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yeah, that's
like
funny.
exactly all of the stuff that they promote on their podcasts of like, and I mean, you know, not to get on the whole rant of it, but then it's like the Andrew Tate stuff. Like there's so much evidence that this guy is pimping out girls and forcing them to do webcam against their will. And then those are the same people that are propping that guy up, want to know what's in the Epstein files.
Oh yeah,
like the hypocrisy is so insane.
I love
to
that
me,
the Daily
and this
Wire,
Lolita culture that we've lived in with the virginity obsession of young girls. They're completely overlooking that part of it. They're looking only at like, oh, it's a class war about rich people. No, it's still the same thing that like teenage girls are like the canary in the coal mine of society, and they have been like a victim of this for all of time. It's only like brand new for it to be wrong to like come after a teenage girl.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's ancient evil crimes. And like, yeah, my issue, there's certainly a lot of people who are jealous. I have ire towards the White House for doing it that way. Cause it's like a lot of those people, Cerno and Jessica have been covering that story for a long time. Cerno's the guy who helped break the whole thing open. So I get it. I wish the White House didn't do it that way. You know, it seemed odd to me that they would do that. I got a lot of issues with all that. And then, yeah, the other stuff you're saying, it's like the Daily Wire has no problem loving Elon Musk, but they hate the Tates. I don't like either, right? I don't like any three of those people. And they all, it's like, okay, these broken families and those degenerates are okay, but the Tates are not okay. Like, I just don't understand it. There's no moral center to it at all. And it's all just BS.
And there's weird Puritan stuff that is like coming up, but then it's like the people they're positioning are the exact opposite of any of these like values that people are pretending to have.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we actually get transparency. I think the people who weren't jealous and the people who are like me mad at the White House, it's like we just want information after everyone telling us they're going to give us information. I don't think there's information.